Hey, it's a pleasure to say hello, Campo and Joe. We're back on Facebook Live. We're back on all of our 1010XL social media channels. I feel like I got to give Coach a fist pound, a big hug, because we haven't been able to do Campo and Joe for a little while. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. I had a little bit of a vacation. Had a chance to go to Dallas and mess around with the grandkids a little bit. So it was a time, but I miss it, Joe.
Yeah. Oh, listen.
I love doing this. Yeah. You know that. So
well, he goes on vacation. I go on vacation. But then OTAs started this week. And do you see the smile? Do you see the fire? We're going to get into all that. Now, our plan is during the offseason, as many times as we can gather and put a Campo and Joe together, is that we're going to hit basically what we think should be happening about this time of the offseason, some of the things that you are noticing that are clearly different than, say, a year ago, just stuff that you like to see. So overall, Coach, let's just crank it out with the very first OTA look that you had. How much different was it from last year? How excited were you to see the plan unfold under Doug Peterson?
Well, there were a couple things that were exciting about it. You know, first of all, it was different from the standpoint that there wasn't as much, there was a bullhorn out there last year and guys were having to sprint to the next drill and, some things that's not the way it should be. Mm-hmm. The practice, the way they ran it was organized. Guys got where they were supposed to get. And there just wasn't a lot of interaction like that. It was more, we're professional. We're going to get out there. We know what we need to do. Mm-hmm. Even their stretch line and their pre-practice activity was orchestrated before they came out there. It was nice and smooth. Very, very organized practice.
Now, I know we're not going to see pads come on until training camp, but were there any winners and losers? Because remember, Herb last year, he would run out there and declare winners and losers. It was, I hate to pile on, but that's kind of the feeling that we have right now because it was such a miss last year.
Well, the thing is that, the athletes of today are a little bit different. And I think the one thing, when I look back at last year, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on last year, but when I look back at last year, I just don't think Urban was completely prepared for the athletes of today and the way professional athletes are working these days. These guys are grown men, and they know what they have to get done. What I was interested in seeing was when the ball was snapped, what are they doing? Mm-hmm. And they were going full speed,
okay.
And as much as you can do in shorts.
Right.
There was enthusiasm out there. And the one thing I saw from the assistant coaches was a lot of energy. Rauscher, the offensive line coach, he was getting after it. And excited. And Deshae Townsend, the secondary coach, young guys. And it's a little bit of indictment on us old timers. Mm-hmm. But when you got a guy like Warhop, for example, he's an outstanding offensive line coach. But the energy is with young people. It's a young person's game, and that's what I kind of saw out there.
All right, so I'll tie that together. George Warhop was the offensive line coach under Doug Marrone, under Urban Meyer. He was a holdover, and we all know the offensive line didn't perform to the level that Jaguar fans expected. But you mentioned Phil Rauscher, who comes over, who had coached under Doug Peterson before, comes from Minnesota, joins the staff, and Mia O'Brien, she has a nice piece on one of our video channels where she's interviewing Walker Little and Ben Barch. They both immediately recognize the difference in the way Phil Rauscher is coaching.
Right, and that's going to be the key. I think as we go through kind of what I saw, it goes back to, the energy of the assistant coaches is almost more important than Coach Peterson. Mm-hmm. Coach Peterson has two jobs. He's got to come in and set the stage, and he's got to be a little bit hands-on with the quarterback because that's what makes him special going into this thing. But he also has to have a dialogue with all the players. That was missing. He knows players' names already. He knows, the trust factor is going to be real big with him. And I think that's what separates him. But the assistant coaches, how they teach, the energy level that they have is going to be extremely important with a young football team going forward.
All right, so give us a couple of examples because we were talking about this earlier. And on the football field, everything looks organized. It looks there's really no dead standing around or anything like that. So kind of spend a second on that because I think that's important too.
Well, there are two things. Number one, they did something that we did, and I'm trying to think back, but I don't believe they did it this way a year ago. I may be wrong, but I know this stuck out to me, was that the special teams were done twice during practice, but once prior to practice. Starting. And I think that's important because you teach the fundamentals during, the communication on the punt team and how you're going to read what's happening on the other side when they're fresh. And then during the practice, when they went with the special teams, it was more drills on how to take on rushers and getting in angles and lanes down the field. That, to me, is how you do it, and that's part of the organization of practice. The other thing that stood out to me was standing on the sideline. I'm standing right next to Deshae Townsend, and he had Williams, the cornerback, the new cornerback over there, and Shaquille Griffin and
Tyson Campbell.
No, well, he was in special teams, but the safety, number 2.
Yeah, you got Cisco, you got Rayshon
Jenkins. Yeah. They're over there working on bunch routes, how to play combination of bunch routes, which took them 8 games last year to get figured out.
It did.
No one was standing around. When this drill was going on over here, anybody that wasn't involved in that drill was doing something. Even if it was just one guy. Josh Allen wasn't on special teams. He's getting coached one-on-one with Bill Shuey. And to me, that's how you do it. You don't stand around. You don't you're only out there for X amount of times, and with a new collective bargaining agreement, it's a lot less than we had going, and you want to make sure you maximize that, and that stuck out to me a great deal.
The thing I like is that from the class to the grass is the way I'm describing it, meaning that they get a lot of work done in the classroom, and even though they have a limited amount of time, they're getting good classroom work in. I want to say maybe the first couple of weeks before they were allowed to get them out on the field, they only had basically a couple of hours of instruction, but they're maximizing their time. They're making good use of that. So whatever they teach, they better those players better have that knowledge in their head.
And part of that is, how important the assistant coaches are because they're doing the majority of that. And I think they put together an experienced but a young staff that have played the game, some of them, which I think is important, probably more important now than ever, because I think players in this generation look towards guys that have done it before, and they have a little bit of credit, credence to what they're doing. We had it coming in. We were a young staff, but we had to work our way into it because we're coming from a college.
Right.
But we had a national championship that we could walk in and say, hey, look, guys, if you do it this way, we had a couple guys drafted, about 20 of them. We had a little bit of credence from that. But guys that have played the game in the NFL in this day and age, I think are important to have those guys.
So let's just immediately take that to Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. And I'm going to get you to name a handful of other guys that you liked, that you thought at least excited you. But Trevor said it in the presser after this first OTAs where the media were allowed to check in, is that Doug's played the position. He understands what it takes to play the position. And he understands the enormity of the position. And I love the fact that Trevor's getting that guy working closely with him.
Well, one of the things that he's made very clear is that when he was at Philadelphia, he started out quite hands-on with Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
And as the notoriety of the job got going, he went away from that. And I look back at my experience as a head coach in Dallas, I was nowhere near enough hands on the offense.
That's interesting.
I spent a lot of time with the defense, and we still played good defense, but I didn't keep my hands tight enough on the offense. And this quarterback position obviously is the key to the whole thing, and especially in this case with Trevor, a young guy that's got a chance to be outstanding. Just little things like, McCoy's coaching the kid on the fundamentals of the game and reading defenses and that type of thing. But just the idea of the head coach being able to step in on a throw and say, hey, look, Trevor, if you were a little quick off that read.
Right.
just little things like that, and have a relationship and a trust factor is extremely important, and I think that will pay dividends.
You gave an example of seeing Doug Peterson way back when you were a coach and he was a player up in Green Bay, and he was picking up on certain things. Leroy Butler said he learned from the backup quarterback, Doug Peterson, about his position, playing safety, because of how, he put thoughts together when it comes to the game. So you add Doug Peterson, Mike McCoy, you mentioned the assistants are all hands-on. Mike McCoy is a former head coach in the National Football League. He's the quarterback's coach now. Press Taylor has drawn up some pretty nice offenses. So the combination of all three of those guys can have a major effect on Trevor.
And I think from what I've heard, and I spoke with Coach Peterson before the practice, and before the mini camp when I was over there last week, the rookie mini camp. And one of the things he talked about was we don't have three guys speaking to him all the time. There's a pecking order of important. How things are going to be done. And if a guy's a passing game coordinator, that means that he's from a logistical standpoint, he's looking at the whole picture. But the guys talking to the quarterback are going to be the quarterback coach and Coach Peterson. I'm pretty certain.
And that makes sense. That really does. And I'm thinking more than anything else, the experience on the NFL level, all those guys have it for the most part. And the idea that he will hear consistent, good voices in his ear that are going to keep moving him in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Instead of pulling him this way and pulling him that way.
Right.
All right, so let's just stay on the offense. And I probably will go to Travis Etienne and ask you a thought on him first because of the injury question. And it was exciting, I think, for a lot of people. We first reported it on 1010 that Etienne is cleared for everything. He can practice. So start with him, and then we'll get to a few other guys that jumped out.
Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with Etienne. Especially in shorts. Now, I don't know about when the pads go on. I don't know anything about that. But I know, looking at him in practice, the speed was evident. And the ability to accelerate is the thing that probably interested me the most.
Right.
And, they ran him inside, they ran him outside. So, it's a zone scheme. And, he's a guy that can run that type of, quick step and accelerate. They got him on the perimeter 2 or 3 times. So he looked good to me. And again, I didn't watch him specifically every single play, but he looked good when he had the ball in his hands and he had a couple catches, and he looked good. It looked like he was 100%.
Yeah, I think the neat thing is he can line up here, there, and defenses are going to have to account for him. And there's two or three of those types of guys that I think can do a lot of different things schematically, can make plays from different spots in an offensive formation.
That was evident really in the very first practice, watching those guys, and they did a lot of stuff offensively. I mean, they had a number of different routes and this and that, but Ingram, the tight end.
Let's hit these guys because what you said about Evan Ingram fired me up.
Well, Ingram's might be the fastest of all of them.
That's saying something.
He's 230. I mean, he's not going to block a lot of guys in the middle of the line of scrimmage, but he can be anywhere. He can be the outside receiver. He can be in the slot. He can be a move tight end. Within the formation. And that's the same to me that they're getting out of Kirk, because Kirk was outside and he was in the slot. So he's going to move around as well. And I think the one thing we know about Kirk from listening to his coach when y'all had him on the show.
Yeah, Sean Jefferson.
He's a guy that can, mentally can play anywhere. And the one thing that showed up about the receiver core, including Dan Arnold, was all of those guys, Zay Jones, Kirk, and even I was a little bit surprised at Marvin Jones.
Okay, that's good to hear.
He can run.
I'm a fan. I love Marvin.
Everybody said that he can't run, but I mean, that guy can run pretty good as well. But the speed of those guys is what stuck out to me. Now, whether or not they catch the ball in traffic and all that kind of stuff is going to be down the way here.
Well, and there's so much that we have to see. Pads have to come on. Guys have to get off blocks. all those things. But you're talking about integrating second year of one free agent of Marvin Jones, integrating Christian Kirk, a highly paid guy,
Right.
getting Evan Ingram in a position where he can make plays. And we start adding all these up. And I'm going to throw Viska back in this conversation. If they can scheme a guy up, he is a big enough, fast enough, talented player that needs to come through. We're talking year 3. He needs to start being not an X factor. That's probably too much to put on him, but he needs to be an integral piece of this offense.
Well, when you look back at last year now, he had a lot of drops.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that everybody's sour on him.
Yeah.
But, he's had decent productivity in the 2 years.
When he gets the football and he keeps it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a role for a guy like that. He's a guy that they can put in the backfield every once in a while.
Yes.
A Deebo Samuel type of a guy. Now, he's not Deebo Samuel at this point right now, but, there's a role for him. And in my mind, looking at their guys, I would think that he's going to make the team. So there's going to be a role for him somewhere within
agree.
that bunch.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you said Christian Kirk lining up outside and in the slot. That gives you some multiple dimensions to his game.
Right.
Evan Ingram in line and outside or in the slot, multiple dimensions. You can put Viska in a number of different spots. You have Etienne, Viska, and Christian Kirk, all cat quick, that can line up in multiple different spots.
Correct. And I think that combination is going to be used. And one of the things that I think, when we talk about whether this team's going to be better or not next year, better on offense is the coaches putting the roles in the right spot. And it's not always Christian Kirk going to go one-on-one. He's not in my mind, he's not a pure X receiver.
Okay. I agree.
He's a special guy. He can do a lot of things and he can make plays with the ball in his hands. And the one thing that stuck out to me that I didn't mention, when you're talking about the speed factor, he looks like he's got a second gear. The one play, the big play he made, he was even Steven with the DB. And when the ball went in the air, he accelerated and he can track the ball in the air. And it's a post for about 40, 50 yards.
Yeah, that's big.
So I think that they're going to be better there just from the standpoint that they've got some guys that they can count on that can catch the ball. And they have that versatility in being able to use some guys in different roles in different spots.
All right, so hit the coach's notes and give me a couple more on the offense before we kick it over to the defense.
Okay, well, first of all, I thought it wasn't a bad day for Trevor. You could see that they've worked together prior to this. They've been doing it on their own and getting a feel for what the receivers are doing and the routes they're running. And, he had a lot of pressure on him because the defensive guys were going a little bit different speed than, with offensive guys are going backwards and no pads. Those defensive guys don't care one way or another. They're going to run over you if they're
trying to impress their coaches more
absolutely.
than the other guys are.
So he made a throw that was unbelievable. Graham, I'm sure, can attest to that. That was there. He rolled out to his left. He scrambled out to his left, and he threw a crossing route about 45 yards down the field.
The one
on
man
the
hurts. The one to man hurts.
A tight end.
Yeah.
His two biggest throws, well, he had one deep post to Kirk, but his other two biggest throws were to Manhurts, and they were money.
Yeah.
Like, he was really accurate yesterday.
Yeah.
Like,
and
super
so,
accurate.
to me, I think that's a real positive on the first day out there that the guy's making some throws. And I think that's going to bode well as well.
And this has been discussed a little bit in the offseason that he is not making fundamental changes to his swing, but he is not tinkering with it. I'm sitting here using poor choice of words. He is making some subtle but significant changes to his throwing motion to make sure that he reads, recognizes, and delivers the ball on time. Those are all things that Trevor's working on right now.
Yeah, and that's something that's going to be important. Now, listen to the quarterback whisperer that you guys have.
Denny Thompson.
Denny Thompson, there are some things that he can improve on, as all the guys can. Yeah. And that's where the coaching comes in. That's where the quarterback coach is extremely important on the fundamentals of the game.
All right, hit the line. Just as far as there's still an opportunity for Juwan Taylor to win, and I mean win, the right tackle position, and there's an opportunity for Walker Little to beat him out and take that position away. We're not going to see that unfold right away, but what did you think of some of the things on the offensive line?
Well, first of all, I didn't watch the offensive line as much as I will the next time we go out there, because, again, it's hard to. You can see a little bit of athletic ability, but I kind of know the athletic ability of the guys. You know what I mean? You just can't see the punch and the reaction to different movements and stuff like that until they get into a little bit more pads.
All right, let me phrase it this way, because we may not see them in pads. We won't see them in pads until late July.
Right.
All right, but let me phrase it this way. At some point, between these OTAs and minicamp, before we even get to training camp, do you think they will have figured out whether Walker Little can beat out Jawan Taylor for that right tackle spot without ever putting pads on?
No, I don't think so.
So pads have to come on.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have a pretty good idea athletically where everybody is at and how smart they are. And, the defense is running enough zone pressures and stuff like that as they get more stuff in, they're going to have to handle twists and stuff like that without pads on. So you'll see the mental and the foot quickness and that type of thing. One of the things I noticed at the rookie minicamp, Fortner, for example, Rauscher had him on the sled, and he was coming off, and he's got good punch, but he wasn't rolling his hips. And he was coaching him on that.
Okay.
You got to get your hips into it.
Yeah.
Well, some of that stuff you're not going to really know if he's really mastered that until the pads come on. And that's important.
Hits change everything.
So to me, I think Jawan Taylor's going to have an opportunity to play right tackle. Okay. And I think Little is going to have an opportunity to challenge him at that position. And I think the best man's going to win. Yeah. And whether or not they're going to move guys around, I think they'll try to get the best 5 on the field.
Yeah, I've been saying one guy's got a chance to win the job. The other guy has a chance to make sure he doesn't lose the job. And that really is it. And then I don't think we can say this right now definitively, but you just said something. If Walker Little doesn't beat him out, he still may have an opportunity to win another job.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that he has is versatility. I think he could play inside for sure. Okay. I'm not sure on Jawan. But
that's
I think,
so interesting.
Yeah, I just don't know. I think we can talk more about that when I see him a little bit more individually. But I think Walker has the ability to play a number of positions down the line.
All right, so let's get to the defensive side of the football, and we'll do this as often as we can every time we get a chance to see these players. But there's a lot of new faces on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm thinking they did a lot in terms of upgrading speed-wise.
Yeah, I think the 4 things that stick out to me that I just watching the thing from a head coach's standpoint. Number 1, the speed at the linebacker position is noticeable. Whether it's Alakon and Lloyd and Muma and Quarterman actually looked quick out there. I think that that area is improved in my opinion. Okay. Now, again, taking on blocks, all those kind of things we'll see, but run to the perimeter. There's a lot of speed in that group.
Side to side.
Side to side, and they ran some blitzes, and those guys are, Lloyd is a good rusher. He's fast. All those guys are fast. Alakon was a good blitzer for Atlanta. So that stuck out to me. So if I'm looking at the practice and I walk in, the first thing that's in my mind defensively is we've improved the speed over there. Okay. Walker was not on the field.
Trayvon Walker, an excused absence.
Yes. And he will be there from here on out, from what I understand. So it's not an issue. There was a lot of pressure. Okay. But again, I think they've improved the depth in the defensive line when you look at some guys that can do some different things. But the other things that stuck out to me was Andre Sisco's athletic ability at safety. Andre played the last 2 ball games. I got a chance to see him a little bit. He's around the football. He's not afraid to tackle. He's got excellent hands catching the ball. Just watching him athletically, I think that he's got a chance to be a good football player. That stuck out to me. He can run. He's athletic. His ability to turn and footwork-wise was good. I think he's got a chance.
And I know you heard Dino Babers, his old coach at Syracuse, just raved about his ability to be instinctual.
Yeah.
And that's going to pay big time.
And that's interesting because it's going to be, to me, unless the injury was a premium factor, but he did play special teams. So I'm thinking to myself, the injury can't be that big an issue.
Right.
Why didn't he play last year? Is it a mental thing of learning the defenses and all those things? Well, that's the responsibility of Doug Peterson and Mike Caldwell and the secondary coaches.
Sure.
They've got to put him in a role where he can learn it.
Yeah, and that honestly, that goes back to from the class to the grass. You got to make sure that individual's prepared to make plays because he knows where he needs to be and what to do.
And I'm going to tell you right now, if the guy was what was he? He was a second round pick. Yeah.
Actually, may have been third round. Let me make sure I got that right. First pick of the third round.
Okay. But if you're a first 3-round pick, nobody's taking anybody that doesn't know what they're doing on the college defense because they're looking at it and they're studying it. So to me, that's a coach's responsibility now. You know, you have to be a teacher. There's 2 things you have to be as a coach, assistant coach. You got to be a salesman and a teacher. You're selling everything. You're selling yourself. You're selling the ability to get them to the Pro Bowl, get them on the field, selling the head coach, selling the Jaguars. So that plus the teaching ability. From what I saw of those guys on the field, I think they've got a decent group. So he was another one that stuck out to me. Where else?
Tyson Campbell, you mentioned.
Yeah, Tyson looked like he was a little bit more fluid.
Okay.
And I think, he played well last year. I think he's got a chance to be a good player.
Because I'm interested in you thinking, and again, this is very early, but you thinking that he might be still an outside corner as opposed to an inside guy, because I've been arguing with everybody, if you paid Shaq and you paid Darius Williams, those 2 guys are going to be your outside
And that
guys.
could be the case.
Yeah.
I think right now he's outside because Williams wasn't out there. Okay. He was in, he didn't practice for whatever reason. I don't know that reason, but that could be the case because the one thing about Williams is he can cover and Tyson is bigger. He's a bigger, kind of a bigger guy in a nickel position. That's good because you got to play the run a little bit as well as play the pass.
He and Rudy Ford are bigger.
Yes.
And both, I think, suited for inside.
Right. So to me, the one thing I think they did do, and that was the other thing that stuck out to me is I think they improved the depth at the corner position. I think they're going to have with Herndon, and one of the guys that stuck out to me a little bit was Brown from Arkansas, the kid that they took with the last pick, a 7th round. Good athlete, quick, looked like he has good instincts. Speed-wise, I don't know if he's got the same speed as some of the other guys. I think that'll be determined. But as far as his quickness and his body control and his ability, he's another guy that has instincts. He had like 6 or 7 interceptions coming out of Arkansas. So
he might be
all SEC.
Yeah.
So he may be a guy that can, and he's a good run defender.
Yeah, I hated to joke, but I couldn't help but make the joke that he was all SEC and he was the last player they selected, and the first player overall wasn't all SEC. Go figure, but that's just the way it went.
And the guy from Wachita Baptist went around before him. So it's a subjective decision when you do take guys. But he just kind of stuck out to me as a guy that has a chance.
All right, so let's make sure I'm not missing anything, but I want you to leave us with this time next week. We're going to see another OTA. How much more do you expect to see? Is it more install? Is it just more, comfortability with the coaches and the players? What do you expect a week from now?
Trayvon Walker.
Let's see some Trayvon.
Yeah, I kind of want to see, what he's doing and how he's doing it. And so I'm going to be eyeballing him, number one. Number two, I really want to continue to look at what they're doing schematically. Okay. Because, to me, last year, the one advantage I think they have this year, I personally feel just as Jimmy Johnson did, who was my mentor, I guess, having a linebacker coach as a coordinator opens up because you're looking at the front and the coverage as a linebacker coach.
Okay.
Whereas the coordinator last year was a D-line coach, and he doesn't do too much looking at the secondary and some of those kind of things. So when you're making calls and putting install, having the idea what the secondary can handle and what the front can handle, the combination of those things makes a difference. So I want to kind of see what what they're doing from week to week and how they're handling it. And then I want to get a little bit of look at the offensive line and Juwan and see where he's at. Because
I got a feeling that battle is going to be unfolding throughout.
Well, the interesting thing will be Cam Robinson will be there. Yeah. And so I think we'll have a better idea of who's lining up where and how many reps they're getting.
Yep.
That makes a difference as it goes along, I think.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Coach, we're off and running.
All right.
We got to see some action, so we will keep it going for next week. Campo and Joe, we appreciate all y'all tuning in, Facebook Live, any of our social media channels, or if you just hit play and listen to the podcast, we always appreciate that as well. Joe C. from XL Primetime, Dave Campo, we'll talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. I'm smiling. It's football time.